want to wait for a minute. So, all right, on that note then, let's get started. So by roll call vote, those who are present, Edwin Claflin.
Here.
John Maintenon.
Here.
Joseph Topham.
Here.
And Ian Golding here. So right now, Michelle Kramer, excuse me, and RJ Turcott and Laura Walters are not present. So good afternoon, everybody. Good afternoon, Mike.
Afternoon.
And so a motion to approve the agenda, please.
So move, Mr. Chair.
Thank you, Joseph.
Seconded.
All right. So any second?
Seconded.
Thank you. Thank you, John. All right. So that's unanimous. I'm not going to go through roll call. Approval of minutes. Everybody got to read the minutes. Thank you, Mike, for your exhaustive minutes.
Yes.
Yeah. Okay. Is that a motion to approve, Joseph?
Motion to approve, sir.
Okay. Thank you. Thank you, everybody. Okay. Approved unanimously. Action and discussion items. So the first one is Pleasant Street and Williams Lane improvements. Discussion of Nantucket Historical Commission letter from July the 11th. So, Mike, do you want to initiate a conversation on this at all? Or are we just back to where we started from last time, where we all have different opinions and different conflicts as we wonder how it's going to work out?
Sure, and if it helps at all, I am putting together a slide deck for an NPEC meeting Monday night. Joe, here's your sneak preview. So just following the options that the Historical Commission outlined. Option one, and this is their labeling of options. Option one is to keep the two-way traffic flow along the roadway and align the path behind the existing network of trees, or array of trees, excuse me. Option two is the repurposing of the southbound lane to a shared use path that you're familiar with. And option three is the removal of the trees and installation of a sidewalk. And just to briefly summarize, their July 11th letter did ask for use of all natural materials for curbing medians in the path, minimize signage. They did have majority of support for option two with the pilot program to establish the feasibility of that option. And the biggest key factors that they wanted to preserve are the tree canopy and the narrowness of the roadway. So I believe what I would ask from you all to help inform decisions from NPEC and what would subsequently be the select board or the county commissioners would be a recommendation, whether you support the option one, option two, or option three, or if you wanted to keep your existing option, which is to it essentially supports option two as it's outlined here, but I believe you just recommended a one-way option with a pilot, and if it's deemed not feasible, then go to a two-way option. So,
thanks, Mike. Any comments from commission members?
Can I ask Mike, the option one, the picture, which has no, I don't know, grass between the path and the road, is that, it's something I just never focus on. Is that accurate? Is that the way it's going to be?
just to be clear, you're saying the option three that's included in the letter.
I'm sorry, option three.
Okay. Correct. That's what's being recommended right now as an alternative, is a 5-foot wide sidewalk with the two existing travel lanes, and removing and replanting the tree line west of that path.
With the existing vegetation being relocated?
I don't think it would be transplanted. I think,
Okay.
well, I mean, I don't want to eliminate that just yet, but I really don't think they could be transplanted. I think with what we've heard about their lifespan and whatnot, I think the biggest the option would be to replant some kind of new tree to be determined in there, not transplanting.
Are any of those like town trees or otherwise, I don't know, special?
Show the
Yeah.
picture of option one again, Mike, to show the trees. Yeah, there we go. So they're old. And are they town trees or private?
They're on private property. The historical commission does feel they're contributing to the historic character by providing the canopy. I've heard that these might be at the end of life, but not. I don't think there's anything confirmed that these aren't going to live, you know, sometime in the distant future. I don't think these are dying right now. I think these are something that felt to be important, but
So
I feel like I should have a town arborist at the meeting to kind of give a better answer than that. I felt very clumsy explaining that because I'm not an arborist.
no, you're not being clumsy, Mike. And I mean, it's just a guesstimate. And ultimately, are we putting pedestrian and bicyclists' lives ahead or behind the life of trees that are in the way of making the road safer? Is how I would sum it up. But Joe, I'm interrupting you, so please, you had your hand up.
No, so I was doing a project and there was a tree that came into question. And so I brought Gary Dale out, the town arborist, and then I brought Jim Cook out, and he looked at the tree, and they basically said, oh, within 3 to 5 years, this tree's going to die. And so the way it was situated, they thought it was going to fall on the neighbors. So, you know, the neighbors was a little upset, but then once you found out the age of the tree and the lifespan, you know, we said, well, we'll relocate one and new and like kind, and it actually worked out better positioning for her as far as screening and protection. So I think if we could get that information, if they knew of like somewhere along this was a timeline was going. I like the option one because I do like the canopy and the swinging around. It would kind of reminds me of, you know, going out Surfside Road and a little bit of even Pulpus Road, where you're kind of screening and coming around. So I think it might be a little fun little thing around the trees. If they're saying they'll survive another 20 years, then I think this would be kind of a really great workaround to kind of maintain that street canopy and feel. And I know you mentioned something about safety, but I don't think that would really, you know, cause anyone to be dumped out or anything like that. I think maybe where that red arrow is, to make sure that it's wide enough that someone can traverse and get on that path from there, just to make sure they're not swinging onto the road. But I think if the timeline is that these trees have a 3 to 5 year lifespan, then I think I'd probably lean towards option 3, and then trying to plant something of like kind to keep that street character, which I think is important. But I also feel that when you get to this area, it's the vastness of that lot that really is unique. It's not so much the trees, they're important, but I think it's just being able to look, you know, 150 feet across and see that beautiful white, you know, farmhouse. I think that's what really is the most important part of this. So I think if there's some way we can kind of work this together. So my option would be do the trial of option 2 and then get the age of the trees and then decide between option 1 and option 3 and then revisit that with the historical commission. So that's kind of my thinking.
Okay.
Thank you.
Thanks, Joe. So I guess I misunderstood. I thought the dotted line was just showing the existing layout. Are you saying that they're going to actually, that the abutters have agreed to having a multi-use path go behind those trees on their property?
The abutters haven't agreed to anything. They've
Okay.
given us their preference, and probably I would, if I had to guesstimate, option one would be their least preferable because it has the most impact. In fact, that was verbalized at the historical commission meeting that this is the most impactful option to them. Rightly so, it does encroach on the property the most, so that stands to reason. And just to be clear, this dotted line is to represent a pedestrian path, like a 5-foot wide sidewalk. At least that's what's being discussed right now is either a sidewalk option or repurposing the southbound lane to accommodate bicyclists.
Yeah, and I missed about saying bike path, sorry.
Okay, so the dotted line does not represent at this point the idea of a multi-use path behind those trees then?
No.
Okay.
And I mean, who's getting who? Bicyclists may be using the path along this section, but just to be clear, because further up in this photo, closer to Five Corners, that sidewalk is really tough to accommodate bicyclists. So with utility poles and the sidewalk and everything else, it's just it's a really difficult part. So to advertise this as a bike path, I wouldn't go. I think that's a step too far.
Okay, thanks. Edwin?
Thank you. I was just curious, have we had any update about reaching out about the encroachment areas? Has that been followed through yet?
I don't believe the county sent out letters of encroachment there, but I believe we did settle on the notion that the encroachment would not, removing an encroachment would not create a new facility. It would just, I guess, if anything, make it easier. So I guess your side mirrors wouldn't brush against the privet. And if someone needed to stand in that area, there would be some minimum area of refuge for a pedestrian if they happen to be on the side of the road.
Right. And then within option 3, is there any designation of what the curb is going to be like? I've noticed the style of sidewalk or berm or whatever we're calling it that was installed on Gardner Lane that now everyone sort of hops up on. And I'm curious if this is going to be a separated raised sidewalk or if it's going to be easing into the roadway.
I believe
Do you know what I'm talking about? Like
a vertical granite curbing along the section as it exists further up the roadway. I think we just continue that look down.
Do you know what I'm talking about on Gardner Way? What that?
Yeah,
what that's
Edwin,
called?
that's temporary. So in other words, that's temporary until they come back in the fall and they're going to do the entire layout of sidewalk on both sides at once. So,
okay.
Yeah, that's not a permanent arrangement. And I see Joe and Holly both have the hands up. And about the encroachment you asked about the hedge. So I was sent a couple of pictures this morning that show that the hedge is definitely, if it was cut back to where it should be, it would make a significant difference to bicyclists, I think.
Yeah.
And so that would be something that I would be in favor of us asking through Mike to get the DPW to do it. So.
Thank you.
Yeah, and thank you for bringing that up, Edwin. Yes, Joseph.
Thank you, Mr. Chair. Yeah, I agree. If you can reach out to DPW, that'd be great. So one thing that came up with our saying we wanted this road to be one way is, and I don't want to quote Matt Fee, but the one thing that did come up, I believe, is that the Phalans who own this property did reach out and said, let us know what we can do for easements. So we want to work with it and we don't want a one way. So I believe that I don't think they probably want option 1, but but you never know what they want to do. And I'm kind of guessing here, but if they went for option 1, that would be great for us because then it would maintain the streetscape the way it is now. And I think that would be beneficial, and I think that would be more in keeping with what the historical commission wanted. But I see Holly's hand up, so I'd like to see what she has to say. Thanks, Chair.
Holly, good afternoon.
Good afternoon. Thank you, Mr. Chair. Thank you, Joe. So one, I wanted to mention about Gardner. Yes, you're absolutely correct, Mr. Chair. The that all of that is temporary for the sewer force main project. So that will be put back as it was previously with all the previous materials, the historic material that the sewer department has been retaining. And then when it comes to any curbing that's existing on Pleasant Street, of course, we would want to keep that, retain that as it is. So, you know, you all might be familiar with, there's some aspects of further up Pleasant Street where you have a hodgepodge of material. Some have brick, some have asphalt when it comes to sidewalks, and some people have been wanting that to be retained. Or I should say, take up the macadam old asphalt and put down brick. That obviously is appropriate as well. So not reintroducing a something new like a Cape Cod berm, I don't think that would be appropriate. The feeling of this area, the setting, the historical commission was very adamant on, and I brought it up as well, is that this is like still a rural setting, especially with the Phelan's property. Something that, you know, it used to be, and want to keep it that way as much as possible. So retaining that character and setting of the rural feeling would be appropriate. I think there was mixed feelings about how the pilot would be done. I think there's interest in doing a pilot to see how that one way would work, but retaining the existing character. And I think that also includes retaining existing vegetation as much as possible would also be something that, you know, retaining the character and setting would be what everybody would want, at least from the historical commission's perspective. And I think that plays a big role into the tree canopy that exists, that everybody likes to see. But understanding that safety also needs to come into play as well. So I hope I didn't botch anything up, but I just wanted to express that. Thank you, Mr. Chair.
No, thank you, Holly. I think you've really summed it up well. We're all trying to deal with it and come up with something that works. And I think last time, didn't we have more or less a consensus that we would support the pilot project to see how that worked out? And then if it seems to have more problems than solutions, then we would be back to the drawing board. Is that the sort of feeling of my fellow commissioners?
Yes, sir.
So shall we make that motion then to support the pilot project, and also tack on requesting that the DPW deal with the encroachment on the south side of the road there?
I just saw Arcus Power jump on. I don't know if he wants to.
Oh, I guess it's the
Interesting.
east side of the road.
Yes.
Art, do I have the wrong compass point there?
Thank you, Mr. Chairman. I wasn't sure how to raise my digital hand. Just as a follow-up to the last meeting, I thought that actually you settled this on the encroachments at the last meeting and that would have already happened. But regardless, yeah, I mean, I have to really disagree with Mr. Burns that the feeling was it was just about mirrors, it wouldn't make a difference. And that's why I followed up with the photos, you know, to you. This isn't just a small encroachment. Why there's any pushback or hesitation from the town to, you know, regardless of everything and bundling it with everything else, like why you can just have this encroachment that interferes with bicycles and remains is beyond me. So I actually would hope that the committee would take it separate so that, you know, I mean, I appreciate you doing it, but as part of the other part, but so that it doesn't get held up. I mean, you've got a survey plan, property lines, photos, documentation. I mean, there's a real ability right away to create additional refuge, and you're spending so much time on this corridor. And it's sort of like right there could be fixed. So I just appreciate you, the committee, taking that position on it. And I just would reiterate, as I've said before, not to beat the dead horse, it sounds like it's going the other way, but I don't think that a one-way traffic is a good idea here. And I think the pilot project will be problematic, but thanks for your time.
Thanks, Art. So on that note, I'm perfectly happy to entertain a suggestion that we deal with the encroachment separately, because I agree with Art. I saw the pictures that you sent this morning, and they're a bit shocking, and combined with what you presented last month of the actual survey, I mean, it's clearly, it's a significant encroachment. So do my fellow commissioners feel that that should be addressed separately? Yeah, all right. Would
Yeah.
you like to make a motion that that we ask the DPW to address the encroachment of the hedge on the east side of Pleasant Street between Williams Lane and Five Corners? Are you, John? That was, I could tell, lip
A lip read
reader.
of so moved.
Okay, Edwin moved and you're seconding. So by roll call vote, Edwin Claflin.
Aye.
Thank you. John Maintenon,
I,
Joseph Topham. Is Joe there?
Aye.
Thank you. Ian Golding, aye. And then back to 1, 2, or 3. Option 1, 2, or 3. I mean, I personally share Art's. I don't think it's going to work, but I feel that the only way to show that it isn't going to work is to try it. I guess that's my point. I don't know how others feel on this beyond what we've discussed already. So does one want to make a motion on this? Well, then I'll leap out of the screen at once.
No, I'm wondering if we should wait for some other members to be here, just to, I feel like before we had a full board that we were talking about
Right.
this, and I,
Right. It was definitely 3 short.
yeah, and I
Yeah.
think that I'd like to knock this around one time. I do think the DPW is probably the most important part right now. So,
All right. So
And timing wise, isn't this a potential thing for this spring?
I think it's for the fall, right? The idea was that when there was less traffic.
Mr. Chair, I'm going to ask that you take a motion, take a vote on this and not delay on that, only because I've heard that the select board may want to take this up in the coming weeks. So I would really like to have like something from this committee.
All right.
Unless you
Well-
would like me to communicate to other boards that BPAC is still considering this.
Joseph?
I'll be the bad guy. See where this goes. I'll make a motion to the one-way test pilot.
Okay.
Mike, I'm
Right,
your guinea pig again, Mike. Just so you know.
Do I hear the
Okay,
sound
Mike.
of creaking bones as arms are twisted? Is that sound that I hear in the distance?
Mr. Chair, if it's all right, I would ask Joe if it's all right to, maybe the motion could be to support option 2 as recommended by the Historical
Sorry.
Commission.
Yes.
Yeah.
Motion to support option 2 for a
Okay.
temporary trial. Thank you.
Okay.
Sorry.
And seconded by,
and seconded.
sorry,
Uh,
John?
Yeah,
Thank you. Seconded by John. So by roll call vote, Edwin Claflin.
Aye.
John Maintenon,
I,
Joseph Topham,
Aye.
Ian Golding, aye. With Michelle Kramer, RJ Turcott, and Laura Walters not present. So, and thank you, Art, for participating. And this brings us on to proposed bylaw amendment for path speed limit and e-bike class regulations. And Joe, I believe that's your baby.
Well, thank you, but it's conversations we've been having and then conversations I've been hearing on the street. So I had been traveling back and forth to DC to help my daughter get ready for college. So this was something I started to do some research on the town bylaw, and basically what you see is 5313 and 5314 is the town's bylaw, but what I added was C, which was speed limits for micromobility, class 1, class 3, on a multi-use path or a pathway of not exceeding 20 miles an hour. So the other part of it is when you become or come up on someone, that you slow down to a certain speed, there is this law for beach travel. So if you're driving along the beach and you're doing 20 miles an hour, when you come up on someone, you have to slow down to 5 miles an hour. And I felt it was a really kind of important thing to do. And then also notify the person you're coming up on, or the dog walker, or whatever that may be. And I just felt, and I know Mike's going to tell me there's a lot of redundancy, and so there's some things that go in that will be coming in the state later on, or some of this is already in the state. But I just felt like it was important to bring our town bylaws, so everything's there in one place for everyone to read. And then probably the other part of this is I'm watching the class 3 e-bikes, and they are very necessary vehicle on Nantucket. The new wave director, Gary Roberts, has stated that he thinks that it's brought down a lot of the traffic, along with the bus traffic, people getting on the bus and ridership over like 80%. I think there's a lot of positives going on right now. But the one thing I'm seeing is a lot of the class 3 are, weaving along through traffic, and I don't understand why they don't have some of the same rules and regulations as a moped or a motorcycle to that case. And I feel like, they're doing 20 miles an hour. And I think, Ian, you and I had a conversation where you were talking to someone who was able to reach 55 miles an hour. And to me, I feel, then maybe this is coming at a state level, but I feel like enough's enough. Time is now that we should say, I think that you should get a helmet. And I don't care about went through the hair. Yes, I'm jealous that people have went through the hair kind of thing, but I think that the smartest thing would be, and I'm sure Dr. Lepre, the police department, and the fire department, the EMTs, et cetera, would all say that this would be really smart, is to have the ridership be wearing a helmet. And I think that is certified, for that type of speed. That meets the standards of the United States Consumer Product Safety Commission. So I just think that would be really wise for somebody to do. And I put this together for us. It's not for me. I mean, if you guys say no, and then I'll go alone and die in that town meeting for this, because I think it's really important. And I don't know what you guys feel, but all this was based off our conversations, and I felt like we should be able to do something. And to this level, I did reach out to Miss Beth Hallett, Nantucket Public Schools, and she said that she would love to have us come and register all the bikes and fit the kids with helmets. And I reached out to Jasper Young, and he said that, he would love to help, but he's still at the shoulder season in September, but he can get everything organized in the spring, have the winter when they shut down, take a couple months, have his staff help out. I've reached out to a couple other bike shops, and I've not heard, but I think it would be fantastic to have them all there. The kids select the helmets that they'd like to buy. Maybe the town or CPC or the sheriff's department can buy helmets for the kids, and any kid under the age of 16 started, wearing helmets. And someone as a kid that started skiing, I always wore a hat until I went to Whistler and saw a bunch of granite and said, I think I should buy a helmet. Not that the trees in Northeast are any softer than the granite out west, but I felt like I should start wearing a helmet. And going skiing this winter, I would say that, as a kid, there was probably 1% of people wearing a helmet, to now today going up north, that I would say 99% of the mountain everyone is wearing a helmet. So I feel like this is why we wanted to get back to school and have them start a young base and have them, educate, sorry about my dog, and educate them right from the beginning on how to, wear a helmet, the rules of the road, and kind of know that this is a thing to do. So I think this would be really important for us to do in some way, shape, or form. Beth Al would like me to come in September and start this, but I think it's way too early. But she definitely feels a need to bring this. Thank you, Mr. Chair.
Well, thanks, Joseph. And you're right. We've talked about it. The bike that apparently can go 56 miles an hour is called a Hidos, Hidoes e-bike. I was stunned. The guy did not have a helmet. And I totally support this. And thank you very much for doing all this work on it. And with that, I'll entertain any comments from our fellow commissioners. So yes, Edwin.
Thank you, Joseph, for the great work. I think it's really well said and written down. The only comment I would have would be in the section C. Is it necessary for that language to be focused towards micromobility vehicles, or could it just be that any user of a multi-use path shall not exceed 20 miles an hour? Because if you're, I don't know, inline skating very quickly, or on a traditional bicycle, but a road bike that can go much faster,
That's a good
should
point.
that be just a guideline that for anyone going down there, you shouldn't
I
be
agree. Yeah,
running a horse down a bike path going 30. It shouldn't necessarily matter whether it's a micromobility vehicle or not. And I think that would be my only comment, is that all of the classifications are great and everything else, but as a general rule, I think these multi-use paths should be focused towards lower use, and also directing people to stay towards the right,
yeah.
I guess would be my
Those are all
only
really good
comment.
points. Yeah.
Thank you, Edwin. And I think that's a really good point. And it would be easy to amend that. And of course, it would then go before town council, who would discuss the language with Joe. Because I think if we adopt this, then we would have Joe as our point person clearly. So,
Which I'm fine with, but I also, I mean, it's up to you guys, but I think at the,
I think it can
when
be
the
committee.
article's written, I would like everyone's name on this. I mean, I think that I think we all have the same feel. I mean, and listen, I'm fine to go it alone. But I think that this board is really kind of the one that generated me to do this. So if you guys are fine now all having your name on the top, I think that would be really important. But it's not necessary, but that was something I was thinking. I put my name on it just for Mike's purposes, because I wanted to talk to you all, but I think if we wanted the article to go forward, we can put everyone's name on it, or it can just be mine, but I did it for us personally. So.
no, I mean, that, I think the point is taken. And we don't want
I'll
you
take the
going
sniper
it
hit.
We don't want you going it alone, Joe.
Okay.
This is overdue.
I'm fine, but I just I don't mind representing us, but I think that I love everyone's input on this, and I think what Edwin just said was a really good point. I was a little fixated on e-bikes, so I think it's a great suggestion.
Good. Any other suggestions? So you want to add the language, Joseph, and then hopefully at our next meeting, we'll have a full complement.
Yeah.
And which, let me just check my calendar. Don't think of it, excuse me. Mike, when's our next meeting?
Whenever you want to declare it, Mr. Chair. I think typically we've met the like the third Wednesday is what we've been doing. We were doing Thursdays there for a
So that
little
would be
while, but
September 18th. Yeah. So that would, well, hopefully we get everybody so we could make it unanimous. So,
Yeah, maybe just a blast email, make sure everyone's read it, and then
yeah,
any edits, whatever they could share before, and then we can kind of talk about it. But it's not for this town meeting, it's for the next one. But I'm on two other work groups. One is for a height restriction for basically it's a little too late, but Sparks Ave kind of development And then another one is a cottage colony thing that I'm trying to work with the Affordable Housing Trust and some other work groups, other entities. So I'd like to kind of get this not 100% done, but kind of, close to being done, so town council can review it the next couple of weeks or months. Sorry.
All right, so because the next town meeting is May, at some time in May.
April. So, but everything has to be done by January. So as long as I can kind of get it done, and then that's just sitting there waiting to be printed and put in the articles, that'd be great.
Yeah.
So,
Okay, so actually, I thought that town council had to read it by October or something for, I'm mistaken there? Doesn't have to be ready by October.
I think we're bored, so we might get an extra month or two. Like, is that right? Or is that just the planning board? That's a little bit more leniency. I thought does a BPAC get a little more leniency, like submitting something like planning board, or does that have to be in October?
Obviously the earlier the better. And I would do some thinking about what your motion might be, just because this is advisory to NPDC, whether you want NPDC to, request the select board to sponsor this article that you drafted, or if you're just polling the BPAC and see if there was general support. I mean, you could ask for BPAC recommendation on this. They can make it, and then you could actually submit it yourself just to ensure that it gets submitted.
Okay.
Again, I'm gonna follow my suggestion that I made to you that this be in the form of a home rule petition rather than a local bylaw, for the reasons that we discussed, and try to think about enforceability, just how that would be done, because that was a concern that I got from police. Is just that these are great ideas. Just how do you enforce that?
No, and I understand that, but I guess kind of the point I have is that when, say, something does happen, if there is no laws or regulations in place, there's nothing to enforce. So it's like, okay, well, nothing we could do. But this is where I think if there's something in place and there is an infraction that, hey, you didn't have your helmet, et cetera, then I think there's going to be. I also think starting with the school, I think, is a really important component. And like going back to my ski story, I think and sounding, not speaking for Miss Hallett, but I think that she knows that this would be extremely important to the school system, and start them young and educate them, so I think that would be really wise.
Well, so where you have at the top of the header, high school right of way adopted 6/5/2021 ATM by Article 76, approved 10/7/2021. So that originally was something that I sponsored, and then FinCom approved it and BPAC approved it. And ultimately, I think my name was, I can't remember if my name was still attached to it or not, but it was clearly a joint effort to get it through. And so I think the sooner the better, Joe.
Okay.
Whether your name is attached to it and then FinCom approves and we would also approve, et cetera, et cetera. So,
Okay.
So whichever works, I think, for getting it up for town meeting as quickly as possible.
Yeah, I'll just have it ready for the next meeting.
Yeah. Okay. Great. So continue till the next meeting, which is provisionally September. No, I've already forgotten. September
18th.
September 18th. Good. Okay. So that brings us on to the proposed driveway crossing of the path at 6264 Sankey Road. And Art, I believe that's something you're involved with, right?
Yes, Mr. Chairman, I'd be happy to
Thank you.
discuss this if you'd like me to.
Thank you.
I'm working for the owner of this property, and we were before the planning board at the last meeting, which is what I thought the plan you might have had up was, but that's fine. That was essentially a proof plan for a 40-foot wide road layout, which is not what was intended to be constructed. And what you see in front of you on the screen now is the proposed so-called rear lot subdivision. And I heard loud and clear from the planning board that they're likely to impose The rear lot, excuse me, back up. The provisions for a rear lot subdivisions are subject to a special permit issued by the planning board, which gives the planning board the ability to impose conditions on the issued permit. And the feedback from the board, even though that we weren't yet reviewing this because they were reviewing the proof plan, was pretty clear that they would be looking for information on how these lots would be served, and that there would likely be some conditions imposed, and that we really had to have a good look at both traffic and pedestrian bicycle safety here. So I am currently working on a plan for the driveway to bring forth to the planning board as part of this application. And what I have in draft form, and when I do submit it, I would be more than happy to also file it with you, Mr. Chairman, at the same time, is that a shared driveway for lots 6 and 7 shown here, so that there wouldn't be 2 driveways. And what seems to make sense to me, looking at the area, is probably to come right in at the south property corner, which would actually avoid crossing the bike path. And I've also discussed with the owner imposing a restriction on height of vegetation within a certain distance off of that property line, or maybe it's within that bike path easement itself, to try to improve sight distances there. So those are the 2 things really that I think we can really not even cross the bike path. I think but I still also, I know that I've been part of discussions over the years at traffic safety as well, with this spot as a challenge, sort of the way the bike path just ends right there. And there's some utility poles, there also. But as relates to this project, the idea would be to come in just where that bike path ends to the south, and then split off, and then have that one driveway split to serve lots 6 and 7. The current owner, who owns all of these properties, has also done a fair amount, if you've been out and seen it, of clearing at his own driveway and tried to improve. He's very aware of the situation there with bicyclists, and shares the concern and wants to make sure that whatever happens here doesn't have a negative impact. So that's really what we're trying to do. Like I say, once I have an actual plan finished before it goes, when I file it, I can file it with both you and the planning board. And I'd be happy to take any suggestions that you may have or questions.
Thanks. Yes, Joseph.
Thank you. Art, awesome. I'm glad you're a man of your word. You told us at the planning board. I think the other thing that may be helpful is to see where the Eldridge driveway is. I think that might be really important as far as the overall plan and where we kind of go out. And the one thing that Ian is, as you can see, the next thing, this paths of stop signs, is I was wondering if something, and this is something for you to consider, does it make sense to have a curb cut, if you will, before the bike path of like a 10-foot, Belgian block or something, just to kind of slow people down to say, oh, I'm coming to the bike path, like it does a roadway. It does seem to work, and I didn't know what your thoughts were. So say lot 5, if they had a 10-foot curb cut, so to speak, apron to the east or west side of that bike path, do you think that would help someone leaving the home and be slow down slightly a little bit before they cross over the bike path? Or do you think that would just, what's your thought on that? I guess I'll stop talking. Thanks.
Through you, Mr. Chairman. So you'd be thinking almost like a rumble strip that was into the property. Obviously we don't want to alter the bike path itself. So
Right.
Trying to put some kind of an apron like that. Sure. Anything I think that helps give, at that point, it's probably more visual.
Yeah.
Unless it was to be really deep, right? Because you're not going to have, by the time your wheels are reaching that, to alert a driver. But again, I think we could, sure, I think that's a helpful suggestion, and I completely agree. I have some surveying already scheduled for next week to stake that line along Eldridge Lane. I've suggested that the owner actually, for the part that's on his property, could be a bit proactive there and actually start clearing and doing some of the vegetation improvement. So we're working on that right now as well, but I want to make sure we obviously stay on the property, and I'll detail that area a little bit better.
That's awesome. Thank you, Art.
Thanks, Art, and thanks, Joseph, for that suggestion, which I think is a really good suggestion. And I would hope would be adopted in time, especially by properties that are rental properties. Combined with signs that I think actually warn people who may not be aware that there's a bike path there, which I've witnessed myself over the years several times. So,
But I think that rumble strip, is we're going to call it, is I think it would have a lot of positive impact on people. It's a change of surface, and then it goes, and I think it would make some people like, oh, here we go, I'm leaving my driveway, and even when I leave my driveway every morning, I can hear it, and makes me slow down and look left and right. So it's very effective. And I thought in this instant, Ian, where we've been talking about all the driveways along the bike paths, if this was successful there, then maybe something we could kind of branch out and see where we can do it in other places.
I think it's a great idea, Joseph, and Art, thank you for being receptive to it as a suggestion.
Yeah, thank you. I'll certainly bring it up with the owner. I can't make the commitment, but I agree, and I'll suggest it, and the planning board may also.
Great, thank you. Any further comments from committee members? All right, so look forward to seeing the completed plan, Art.
Thank you.
So that brings us on to the status of path stops. The path stop sign removal, and which is becoming an increasingly sore point with me. And Mike, you told me you left a phone message about this, saying that you were getting so much pushback. I don't know did I misunderstand you? Would you like to elaborate?
No, you asked for this to be put on the agenda, and previous action, you've asked that I coordinate with the DPW, which I have. We brought this up at a traffic safety meeting in months past, and we've continued to review the status of that with DPW. I've subsequently shared that concept with some consultants we've hired to develop a safety action plan. We have a consulting team that has developed they've mapped out all the crash locations. They developed a network of high crash areas and with severity. And right now we're going through different countermeasures and ideas to address some of these locations. One of the areas you brought up, since there obviously vehicle crashes dominate the island, but there are some bike and pedestrian related crashes on the island. And those crashes are still a little bit higher than what they experience in other states. Along with some of the other suggestions we've made, because we did talk about other bike path projects that we're implementing, is this idea of removing stop signs from the path, and that would improve that. I got a very cold reception when I mentioned that. Was asked to take a look at state law and how that might conflict with the existing state law. I have looked at some draft legislation, which we've talked about in the past, and just to see where the status of that, providing crossing protections for all vulnerable users, not just pedestrians, but bicyclists and those using mobility devices. That it was recently sent to study, so that's not something that I don't believe is going to be approved in the near future. And discussing with police recently on this, it was actually suggested that we put in some measures to slow down bicyclists as they approach intersections, just to be defensive and be aware of the traffic. So I don't know if you've seen these different chicane railings or gateway systems that are on like the rail trails leading up to, like, say, a Route 28, where bicyclists have to zig and a zag before crossing the roadway. But that's meant to be a safety improvement to slow down bicyclists. police were asking for some of these heavier traffic locations, whether, you know, that might be something more to consider rather than removing the stop signs and inviting cyclists to cross the roadway. And that was all with the preface that bicycle crashes recently have been pretty high. I think when I was speaking to the police chief, she said that they were having what seems to be bike crashes on a daily basis. And her biggest concern was bike helmets. Like, that really needs to be the focus, is to put a helmet on every bike user. I don't know what the crash situations were in some of these other instances that led to this adamant feeling, but it was definitely a sense of, we need to put helmets on bicyclists, not necessarily remove the stop signs at intersections. Just one last point, if I could, the local bylaw does say major intersections are exempt from this. And the feeling that I got when we were discussing this in some of these locations were that a lot of these locations where we would remove stop signs, they would be considered to be important intersections, and that maybe driveways, we don't need to put stop signs at driveways, which has been requested. But not put them up at say, intersecting driveways or common driveways. But there was a sense that there was a really hard time to figure out what is a major intersection and what isn't, and should we be inviting bicyclists? And that, along with the sentiment I got from the police chief, along with the sentiment that we should probably be in line with state law on crossings until they change that. I'm really hesitant to kind of progress and push for the removal of stop signs from using my time to kind of push forward for this if I'm going to be met with a lot of resistance from other town officials. So I don't know where to take that. I don't know if that's something where you might want to go to a select board meeting and mention this, but just my level from staff, associated with other staff, everyone has cooled on that idea of removing stop signs at bike path crossings, that was actually creating a safety problem rather than a mobility enhancement for some users.
So I'm absolutely astounded. There's no other word that I can use, because the article that was passed 4 years ago had David Worth was one when. So first of all, some background for people who may not have been on this committee 5-6 years ago when this started. So Harvey Young and I went around the entire island and did a spreadsheet for every single stop sign on every bike path on the island. And for instance, this is the sort of spreadsheet that we ended up doing of every single stop path. And the Pulpus Road, for instance, when I went for FinCom for the Pulpus Road, I gave a list of 18 private stop signs on the Pulpus Road that had no business being on the Pulpus Road for private driveways or private roads or dirt roads. And so, needless to add, everybody remembers bicyclists who go through stop signs on the bike path. And the state law says absolutely specific, 720 CMR 90 and 9.06 says Article 20, emerging from alley or private driveway, the driver of vehicle emerging from a private road, driveway, or garage shall stop such vehicle immediately prior to driving upon the sidewalk area extending across each driveway or garage, et cetera, et cetera. And yet you've got private driveways with stop signs. They are illegal. They have absolutely no business being there, as the article that we passed in 2021 made clear. And so, Mike, I'm at my wit's end, you know, in chapter 200 that Joe mentions, in 221:19, the driver of a vehicle should not drive on or over any sidewalk or bicycle path except at a permanent or temporary driveway or at an intersection of streets, the driver of the vehicle prior to driving on or over any such driveway shall yield the right of way to any pedestrian or bicycle approaching within 5 feet of such driveway. So how can a private entity possibly put a stop sign, or the town possibly put a stop sign to try and stop bicyclists and pedestrians from exercising their lawful right to go across that? And the same as 2021-22, emerging from a private road or driveway, exactly the same language. And this has been going on for years. And when Patrick Reed put the spreadsheet together, and I thought that we actually had momentum to starting to remove unnecessary signs, no one, or that I'm aware of, and certainly speaking for myself, I'm not talking about removing stop signs for bicyclists on major intersections. The whole point of this is to have stop signs that actually have some meaning for bicyclists. So, I guess maybe it's up to me to get in touch with the chief of police and the head of the DPW and make my case that this needs to go forward. It's the law.
So you're focusing on the driveway stop sign that
Yeah.
that are there.
Yeah,
I'm sure
and
you have an
and dirt
extremely
road.
valid point. I'm
And-
not sure that that's what is what generally understood as what the intent of this is. If it's just a driveway, I think that's probably an easy task to conduct, is to remove the handful of stop signs at private driveways. The major intersections, I was told that a lot of folks have a lot of issues with that.
Well, sure. I mean, the actual way that the article was drafted, that at any location in which multi-use shared path intersects with or is crossed by a public or private way or driveway, with the exception of major intersections to be determined by the town, bicyclists, pedestrians, and other users of the path shall have the right of way. I mean, it's sort of a no-brainer. So, and so I guess I've said enough at this point. And thank you, Mike, for, pointing out what, makes me feel better that I sort of somehow there seems to be a disconnect here. Joseph?
Thank you, Michelle. I wonder if it makes sense for you and Mike to go for a little drive around and just really kind of point out, I think that you have something in the spreadsheet, but I think to see, and I feel like you guys are, little misinformation is going on here. And I think that it sounds like Mike is starting to see what you're talking about, but I think to go through and then kind of point out each one really quickly and say this one and this one, and then these are great, or something's, on a major intersection, this isn't working and this is why, and can we fix this or whatever. But I think it would be a really good point. And then Mike can kind of relay like, oh no, we're talking about these, and maybe take photographs, maybe make some PowerPoint presentation to like this one, that one, kind of go along. And then you can go meet with the police and fire or whoever else you got to go meet with. But I think that would be important for you guys just to kind of go for a ride and then kind of circle back with us for our next meeting.
Mike, do you want to hold hands on a ride?
If we can find some time after Labor Day, sure. That sounds like a fun activity in October, when things quiet down a little bit more.
Okay.
Again, I would really focus on the fact that this crossing a public way, crossing a private way, or driveways, I think is kind of like if that was not there and it's just a driveway, sure, I think that's what are we talking about? But the fact we're putting in public ways and that major intersections are exempt, but it's to be determined, the feedback I got is that every roadway intersection, every public way that intersects will be considered to be a major intersection. We can talk through that, but again, I'm trying not to be flippant, Ian, and just
No.
marginalize and dismiss this. I put a lot of time into reviewing this stuff, and I'm floating it around the group, and I'm giving you the feedback that I've gotten. And again,
thank you for continuing to keep this up as a subject. And so let's in October, let's go for a cruise.
And I'm not going to leave it to just me, because I don't think I'm the one you need to convince. So we should probably invite maybe one or two of the others, like a DPW or police chief or a police
Yeah.
representative, to kind of
Absolutely.
join that.
Absolutely, and I'll put the package together again. And so I had a ton of photographs with it, so yeah, all right.
Well, we do have the recommendation. We have the spreadsheet with a lot of the different roadway locations where, you know, some treatments to be made. We could probably use that if that's, unless you
Yeah.
have something that's very different.
No, I don't think so. Patrick Reed, right, took my amateur spreadsheet and I think actually put it into did he put it into a PowerPoint document or a Excel document?
Well, it's a PDF that I have, so.
Could you share that?
Yeah, I can put.
Could you send me a copy so I can see how it dovetails with what I've got?
Sure. Yeah, we've reviewed this in the same material a meeting in the last few months. But I can send that to you and just to compare notes.
Thank you. Edwin?
Oh, I removed my hand, but I was just gonna say there is a standard within the town of what is a private driveway versus a public lane, which would require a stop sign. Isn't that a standard thing? And it should be basically just private driveways or private ways wouldn't be permissible to have a sign stopping flow of bike traffic. Is that correct?
No, I'm sorry. Go ahead, Mike. But yeah, as far as I know, you can't put up a stop sign because you happen to have a private road or a driveway. And there are stop signs on the bike path for dirt roads. You know, and no warning on the dirt roads or no warning for renters that they're crossing a bike path. Although, as I said, I've read you chapter and verse of where people have to stop. Pedestrians and bicyclists have the right of way on a multi-use path over cars going across it. I mean, it's in black and white. All right. I'm starting to feel like an angry old man. Sorry, everybody. Just all right.
We still love you.
I'm going to hold you to
Okay.
that date that you promised me.
So
Bring coffee and cookies for Mike.
Can I just make an
Yes,
anecdotal
please.
note about the sidewalk usage? I found that as a daily biker going into town and through town, I've noticed that I think one of the most often places where I am nearly getting into accidents is pedestrians not coming to a complete stop before crossing a road or just jaywalking generally in town. And that is something that, because of the island not having walk signals or pedestrian clearly labeled intersections on some cobblestone areas, there's a general touristy vibe of people just walking and crossing wherever and whenever they want, which is most of the potential bike accidents is happening from bicyclists going along a road and then someone just walking out in front. So I don't know if there can be done something with signage or an improvement to more crosswalks, but it seems as if many of the bicycle accidents that I'm seeing or people near misses in town are happening at crosswalks with people walking across the sidewalk on their cell phone with no regard for oncoming traffic.
Right. I think we've all witnessed that repeatedly, whether we're driving cars or and Mike, you made an allusion to the chief of police saying that there are daily accidents. So when I last spoke to Tim Lepre, he said he reckons there's at least 3 emergency room episodes a day was his, and so it seems astounding that we can't get figures that actually detail where these accidents are taking place and how many emergency room visits there really are.
Mm-hmm.
And Tim gave up, I guess, with he tried 3 times with MGB because he feels that, you know, if we have if we have tick data, then we could certainly have bicycle accident data. And he just was unable to make it happen because, in part, I think because of personnel shifts within the MGB complex. So is that something that the town is interested in trying to pin down? I mean, I know the former chief of police said that he didn't have the personnel to deal with it.
The question again, I'm sorry, I don't know if
Well,
we
the
have an interest
accident,
in,
you said that the chief of police said that, I'm forgetting her name, I'm sorry.
Jody Casper.
Yeah, thank you. But she said there was an accident every day, and Tim Lepre was saying there were at least 3 accidents a day, judging from what was taking place in the hospital.
The data that we get from the state, and this is all through different crash and how it's reported, is based on severity. So if there's a serious injury, if someone does actually go to the hospital, then that's captured. If there's a fatality, that's captured. If there's property damage in excess of $1,000, that's captured. Anything short of that, that's not included into the database that we all have access to. I'm sure there's instances where people, they're much minor, but they're still, traumatic to the people who are involved. That may not ever get reported to the police. That may not ever get reported to the emergency room. So it just gets lost as a story rather than as hard data.
Yeah. All right, other business. Any comments? Relief that the air is beginning to go out of the balloon, as someone said yesterday. Apparently there were over 200 standbys yesterday to leave the island. I was just staggered. Okay, public comment? No public comment? So a motion to adjourn.
So move, Mr. Chair.
Thank you, Joseph. By roll call
Seconded.
vote. Thank you, John. By roll call vote, Edwin Claflin.
Goodbye.
John Martin.
Aye.
Joseph Topham.
Goodbye. I like Edwin's goodbye.
Well, I know.
Robin, I think that's not the norm. That's
No, it isn't.
fantastic.
As long as it isn't goodbye and good riddance, right?
No.
All right.
Ian Golding, aye. Thank you, everybody.
Michael.
Thank you, Art.
Thank you all.
Thank
See you
you,
guys.
Mike.
Good.
Take
Cheers.
care.
Cheers.